In politics, scandals and sleaze are one of the quickest ways any government tends to really lose power. The analogy is it's a very politics can be a very slippery pole. Sometimes you can be at the top only to find yourself slipping back down to the bottom very, very quickly. And our Tory government is completely up to its eyebrows in sleaze and scandals, literally one after another. We've had crony contracts, we've had ministers breaking ministerial code. You name it, what you can name it, and the current Tory party has probably engaged in it in some way, shape, or form. And this has been and is an absolute gift to Labour, because it's literally the Tories handing Labour a sledgehammer, going, here, hit us with it. And this is just, the analogy of Keir Starmer, going to his tool shed and go, which Tory sledgehammer should I use today? is somewhat quite appealing to think about. And ultimately, this in the past has brought down other Tory governments. So ultimately, this could be an absolute gift to Keir Starmer. So that is what we are going to talk about today. So before we jump into that, please do remember to hit those like and share buttons. That does help out the channel massively. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link. And as always, thank you to everyone who does support the channel either of those ways. So on with the article. So this comes from The Guardian, and the title is Sleaze Fells Tory Governments, and that should be a gift to Keir Starmer. So, there has been no year like the past one. When Keir Starmer was elected the Labour leader, he arrived just when the opposition point scoring was not wanted. Days after Starmer's election, the COVID-stricken Prime Minister was taken to hospital, where he was later moved to intensive care. That set a tough stamp on Starmer's first year. The, quote, constructive opposition he proffered was all that was feasible at the time. During the pandemic, all voters wanted to do was escape this horror, and they listened to every conversation, and what you hear is vaccination dates, longing for unlocking, the chance to hug grandchildren, and wishful hopes for holidays. So why doesn't he define himself? Ask some critics impatiently as Labour's public approval ratings tumble. Where's his vision? Do something, reshuffle, turn left, shout louder, attack. What these critics forget is that politics is a seesaw with very simple political physics. When the government is up, the opposition is down, and vice versa. This government now has an 86% approval rating. Yes, 86% on the vaccination programme, the only subject currently in town. Rob Ford, professor of political science at the University of Manchester, tells me he can think of virtually no similar approval rating happening before on the top issue of the day. Scientific genius and the efficiency of the NHS have gifted Boris Johnson the undeserved bounty. Parked at the other end of the seesaw, no amount of political vision could rescue Starmer from this downward bump. And he hasn't wasted the year. Mending the sinking ship he inherited from Jeremy Corbyn, hauled 20 points below the waterline, he has scrubbed out the stains of anti-Semitism, cleared his HQ of those who delivered the car crash election, and taken control of the national executive, installing a serious shadow cabinet and a strong new leader in Scotland. At PMQs, he skewers the ministerial bluster, and naturally the Corbynites don't like it. But he's polishing the party's armour for when politics properly resumes. Starmer's supporters are taking fright at the polls, mistaking his strategy for vilification, itching to charge full tilt and fire all their ammunition. They ignore the doctrine of the right time. After a year without meeting a voter face to face, this summer, Starmer will crisscross the country on a town hall tour. He talks of taking the mask off and opening the throttle. In an Ipsos Nori poll, a hefty 31% were neutral, saying they didn't know him or what he stood for. Will he cut through? He doesn't do barnstorming rallies or billowing rhetoric. He won the leadership with meetings where he talked powerfully for a few minutes, laying out principles on public services, inequality, education and skills, but spent most of his time on direct answers to questions. He left people feeling that they were grasping for what he stood for. Starmer's real test will come when politics resumes and the country needs a fiercely combative opposition. His themes will all be too easy, as COVID support is withdrawn and the unnecessary and the underlying reasons why Britain was left so undefended from the virus will be laid bare. Unemployment will rise, the NHS will stagger under a huge backlog, schools will struggle to meet the needs of children who were abandoned without laptops, food banks will face yet more hungry families, while the gap-toothed high streets will depress neighbourhoods, and Brexit will be biting even harder. The Chancellor Rishi Sunak will dash to repair the country's finances, while the Tory benchers bray to rein in the ballooning cost of state spending. Every one of Sunak's instincts will be sent down from him from George Osborne's austerity plan, with few lessons learned. The future is already cemented into his budget, imposing what amounts to an 8% cut on all departments, bar defence, schools and the NHS. These last two will still lack funds for their alarming needs. And Johnson can deny austerity with eye-catching projects, but there will be no hiding what is engraved in the budget's red lines. The Tories have not seen how economic times have changed since last they accused Labour of spendthrift pathologies. And this time, Starmer is free to borrow and propose a Franklin D. Roosevelt-style New Deal, investing in jobs, people, children, biosciences, the arts, the public realm. And as we have seen, Joe Biden has set the fiscal benchmark with his $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. Nothing can stop Britain in following in his footsteps. It's Tory austerity that is badly out of time. Strategically, Labour will have more ammunition than it can fire. The message is that the country cannot afford another decade of Tory desolation. Starmer's talks of inequality and fault lines and weakened foundations that left Britain slammed by the highest death toll and worst recession in Europe, as he wrote in The Observer. The government makes cuts for nurses and tax breaks for second home owners, while handing out billions of pounds in crony contracts. There is no blueprint for a new Britain. Sleaze is what fells Tory governments, and this government has handed Labour one sledgehammer after another. Rachel Reeves is making headway as the shadow cabinet sleaze buster against the tide of government dishonesty and naked pilfering. There is no escape from the sink of the Cameron scandal. From a former Prime Minister to have lobbied the Treasury on behalf of Lex Greenspill's supply chain finance company, and to have openly reported and boasted that he stands to profit by $600 million from his shares in the firm, and according to the Times, is a breathtaking abuse of the highest office. He only broke the law because he left a loophole in his weak anti-lobbying rules big enough to climb through. And here's where the patriotism bites. Cronyism kills Britain's prized self-image as clean and uncorrupted. Here's where Labour can lay claim to the Union flag. To clean it up, no more British tax havens laundering global dirty money. No more crony contracts for chums. Housing Secretary Robert Jerrick's gift of planning permission from subsequent Tory donor Richard Desmond. Jennifer Akruzzi's privileged access to trade missions during her affair with Boris Johnson add to a rising tide of sleaze. Wave the flag for the Good Law Project's latest sally, taking legal action against the £4.8 billion levelling up fund that has ignored the index of deprivation to fund wealthier Tory seats. Sunak's Richmond and Jerrick's Newark there we go, but not poorer Labour Salford and Barnsley. An MP claiming for duck houses shocked the public during the expensive scandal. But these accusations run deeper and darker into the establishment. Labour people shouldn't wince at the union flag, but appropriate it for themselves for decent values. Woke, of course, embrace that too. And as nothing more is fundamental unifying than a sense of fairness. Labour is always up against the impossible odds, and the local elections may yield weak results. But ahead there are volatile political times. The vaccination bounce will pass, as Rob Ford has told me. Voters do not do gratitude. The Prime Minister and his cabinet of inadequates are incapable and unwilling to meet Britain's daunting post-COVID emergencies. Johnson's charisma will wear very, very thin. And neither bogus political theatrical promises nor culture war political traps will disguise the threadbare realities. For now, have patience, you Labour supporters, until COVID has passed. And take it from me, as someone who has been very, very disappointed recently, I can sort of agree. I am willing to wait and see what happens. But this does mean giving Keir Starmer more time. And I have said very much, I am annoyed at what Keir Starmer is going to do. But I am actually quite relieved about his tour that he's going to do on town halls. Now, if he does come to Barnsley, I hope he does, I will go and I will ask some questions. If I can only ask one, then I will think, what questions can I ask? Maybe we'll do a live stream beforehand, or if we can, we will actually see if we can actually live stream the event. That will be quite fun. We'll have to see what happens. But all in all, we are right. I think there is a strong case at the moment for keeping our powder dry. And as that professor said there, the public doesn't do gratitude. And we are going to be facing huge challenges once, COVID is done. And they are right. The Conservatives just are not up to the challenge for what this faces. We are going to see, and I've talked about it before, austerity on steroids. I've said that phrase before, and I think that is very much still the case. And remember, what led us to the position that we are in today was Tory austerity. People who felt left behind had been left behind because of Tory austerity. They have been in the party that has been there now for well over a decade. We cannot allow them to continue like this. It's absolutely, there need to be new laws. In fact, what might be a very good question, I think, we'll do a poll. I'll come up with some questions. I'll do a poll if he does come, what people want me to ask. But I think a good question to ask him, to Keir Starmer, would be, should there be an office that is, politically unaffiliated, that is designed to go after, sleaze and corrupt politicians, like what David Cameron's done, the Jennifer Cruzy scandal, the fact that, although there's plenty of other things that we can talk about, but there needs to be something done. There needs to be really a radical change in our politics. And I think one of the things I would like to ask him would be, what would he think if we, for example, changed the House of Lords to a proportional representation voting system? Get an elected second house. I think that would work wonderfully. And a lot of people talk about changing the House of Commons. But even if you were to just change the House of Lords to a proportional representation system, that would usher in a massive change in British politics. A massive change. So, like I say, that's just one of probably the future things we've got to talk about. But let me know what you think about this whole Starmer situation. Do you think Starmer should start to make moves now? Or do you think he's right in waiting? Like I say, for the past couple of weeks in my videos, I've said I've been very disappointed. But, you know what? I'm willing to wait just a little bit longer to see what the game plan is. Because trust me, Labour at the moment has a lot of artillery to just open up on the Tories with. And I hope when that happens, the barrage will be absolutely deafening. So, as always, thank you for watching. Please do remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link as well called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. And thank you to all those people for watching, and we'll see you all next time.